On the day the earthquake hit, my husband up and left me, jetting off to another city to be with his crush. I was trapped beneath the debris, and I managed to send him a desperate message. Henry, there's an earthquake. I'm buried underground. It's so dark, and I'm scared out of my mind. After they rescued me, I sent him two more texts before I hurled my phone into the ruins. Henry, I can't hold on any longer. It's a good thing you're busy with work, or else you'd have been stuck here with me and our baby. I even added, you being safe is great, as if it confirmed my plan. Everything was done on purpose. I had purposely wanted him to believe I was dead. I aimed for him to wallow in guilt day and night for me and our unborn child, to shed tears of remorse and regret for not acting differently. When I finally couldn't hide it any longer, I planned to walk up to him and say, I want a divorce. In our second year of marriage, as Henry's crush returned from abroad, I was the one who went to pick her up with him. I stood by as the girl, long black hair, white dress, slender figure, tearfully flung herself into his arms, exclaiming, like a bird returning to its nest, Henry, I finally see you again. For a split second, Henry's body stiffened. Then he reached out and softly stroked her hair, saying, there, everything's all right. I lingered on the sidelines, feeling like an uninvited mistress. After a moment of hesitation, I grabbed Henry's hand and forced a smile. All right, now that she's here, let's roll. It was then that she seemed to notice me for the very first time as she slipped away from Henry's embrace. Her smile held a mix of surprise and unease, and she whispered, Henry, you're married? The three of us then awkwardly made our way back home. Eileen turned out to be not only Henry's crush, but also his half-sister. I had always been aware of his feelings for her, but it wasn't until after our wedding that I learned the full extent of their relationship. Henry's background was tangled. He was an orphan, his biological parents having perished in a car accident when he was 9, and then a friend of his father, who happened to be Eileen's dad, took him in. And so the saga of Henry and Eileen unfolded. Henry had been a withdrawn child from early on, quiet, reserved, and giving off a vibe that screamed, stay away because of his past. Meanwhile, Eileen lived a life of luxury and bliss, innocent and carefree like a little ray of sunshine that slowly warmed Henry and brightened their home. Naturally, Henry never mentioned his connection with Eileen to me, but when I brought her into our home, a place where Henry and I had shared 3 years, I noticed her curious glances and the way she gently touched everything. I then realized that my suspicions were likely correct. That night, while I was cooking, Henry returned with some beef and onions, asking me to whip up a steak because Eileen loves steak. I looked down and stayed quiet for a moment. Henry wasn't exactly the most thoughtful partner. We'd known each other for 8 years, with me chasing him for 5, and had cohabited for 3, yet he would occasionally forget my likes and dislikes, like the fact that I'm allergic to onions. Oddly, he remembered every single one of Eileen's food preferences. Even though she had been abroad for 6 years, I bit my lip and asked, Henry, did you forget? I'm allergic to onions. I break out all over if I touch them. He paused, looking a bit spaced out, then smiled as he gently pushed me out of the kitchen. I'm sorry, Haley. I had no clue about your allergy. We never even have onions on our table. Can you wait outside for a bit? I'll get dinner sorted tonight. Truth be told, Henry and I had had onions on our table once before, 3 years ago, when I had just won him over. That day, I was on top of the world, and during lunch, he ordered a curry dish, and I ended up eating some onions unwittingly. It was also the day he took me to the hospital, but that was ages ago, and he probably forgot. I nodded silently, not wanting to stir up any tension as Eileen remained in the living room. At dinner, maybe because of the earlier incident, Henry kept dishing out plate after plate. This shrimp today is pretty awesome, he remarked while I ate slowly. When I finally looked up, I saw Eileen passing me a shrimp too. She shot Henry a glance before turning back to me with a gentle smile and a casual, sis, have some more shrimp? Brother's shrimp is the bomb. It felt like I was just a guest in my own home. Henry had insisted we bring her in, explaining 3 days earlier that his sister, who'd been living abroad, was coming back. He mentioned she'd had a rough patch, alone overseas, dumped by her boyfriend, and even diagnosed with depression. His tone was tight-lipped, and his eyes carried a hint of despair, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. So, when he said she wanted to stay with us for a bit without alerting her parents, I agreed right away. Back then, I didn't know his so-called sister was actually the girl he'd been crushing on for years. It wasn't until I saw Eileen at the airport, a face I recognized from a photo tucked away on Henry's bookshelf, that I realized it all. She was the moonlit dream Henry had cherished for ages. At night, as I lay awake, I could feel Henry's warm breath behind me, his arm around me, whispering, "Can't sleep?" I nodded, then caught a sigh as I got up to fetch a cigarette on the balcony. That's when I noticed Eileen in the living room, tears streaming down her face amid broken ceramic pieces scattered on the floor. The shards were from the ceramic dolls Henry and I had crafted together at a pottery store that day, where I made his figure and he made mine. They had been our tokens of love, even inscribed with Henry and Haley together forever on the base. Now, shattered into pieces, I frowned at the debris while Henry's gaze was fixed on Eileen. There was something oddly beautiful about her tears, her reddened eyes evoking sympathy, even though it was just a couple of ceramic dolls. Not exactly a big deal, right? Henry sighed softly and pulled her onto the couch, his brows creased. "How could you be so careless? Your foot scratched, and now I'm stuck cleaning up like some maid." Eileen sat there, brows furrowed, tears welling up as she looked so helpless and pitiful. "Sis, I didn't mean to. She stuttered, her words dissolving into more tears, like she was remembering something deeply heartbreaking. I said nothing and headed to the balcony for a smoke. Eileen always called me sister, after all. While Henry was in the kitchen cooking, Eileen and I sat in the living room. She kept addressing me as sister, asking about the details of Henry and my life together over the years. I corrected her. "I'm married to Henry, so we're family now." Without a word, she picked up a cat-shaped pillow from the sofa, grinning in amazement. "Sis, check this out. I gave this to bro Henry before I went abroad. Never thought it'd still be here." Instantly, my brows knitted together and my stomach churned. I held the cigarette in my hand, yet didn't light it. Henry wasn't a fan of women who smoked. He always liked the type that was like Eileen. Black hair, white dress, clean and delicate. Maybe I'd been on the balcony too long because soon Henry approached, snatching the cigarette from me. "Don't smoke. It's not good for you." I mumbled that I wasn't planning on smoking anyway, especially since I was pregnant. And he didn't know that yet. "What about your sister?" I asked, gesturing toward the room. "She's asleep in there," he replied. I pressed on. "Don't you think she needs some company?" "What?" He looked taken aback. I chuckled and asked, "So how long is Eileen crashing with us?" Then, with a rare burst of honesty, I told him, "Henry, I don't really like your sister. Remember back when I was chasing you? There was a time when you got drunk, hugged me, and kept calling out for Eileen. Back then, I had no clue what you meant. But now, do you really see her as just a sister?" He then told her to leave. "She leaves or you choose, Henry." And he stared at me with a conflicted look before sighing deeply. "Haley, what just happened?" he asked. Eileen quickly interjected, "She didn't mean it. I've got depression and my emotions are all over the place. Can't you cut her some slack? I know it's unfair, but Eileen's parents and even she herself have always been kind to me. Bringing her home wasn't for any other reason. I really do see her as just a sister. I have you, right?" Henry made me believe him. I looked at him, recalling our shared past. From high school days, when we first met. Back then, Henry was strikingly handsome and an excellent student, though he wasn't exactly popular because he was too reserved. He'd always sit in the back of class, leaning against the wall in the darkest corner of the room, as if his presence sucked all the light out. Even then, I was smitten with him. I felt we had so much in common. He had been transferred to my class during our senior year, a big deal, since not many students switch schools. That year, I never saw his parents, and truthfully, I rarely saw mine either, since my parents had divorced when I was little and both had moved on, leaving me feeling like the extra person. I figured Henry's situation must be similar, maybe even worse. My own father, although neglectful, wasn't stingy with money, but Henry, burdened with school and a part-time job at a milk tea shop during senior year, broke my heart. I also knew deep down that Henry was gentle, even though he came off as aloof. I remembered a time when I had a fight with my dad and was crying alone in the school library garden. Henry passed by without a word, silently leaving a pack of tissues by my side. I recall the scene: dusk, a gentle breeze, and the golden light making even his hair shimmer. That was when I first fell for him. Later, I took the same university entrance exam as he did and began pursuing him relentlessly. I treated him with all the care I could muster. For 4 years at university, Henry hardly ever went home. Even during holidays, he stayed back at school. I stuck by him, celebrating festivals together, spending Christmas and birthdays one after the other. He liked girls with long hair and white dresses, so I let my short hair grow and wore the dresses he fancied. I learned to cook his favorite home-cooked meals because he claimed they reminded him of home. I did everything for him. Yet as I did more, I realized so many things had already been done for him by someone else. There were just too many reminders of another girl in his life. But I never gave up. I figured if someone else did it, I'd do it better, until no one could top me. I had never been treated well before, so I tried extra hard to treat him right. I pursued him for 5 years until I finally had him. But now, that girl was back. Even if you promise me you only see her as a sister, what about Eileen? Are you sure there aren't any other feelings there? After a long silence, he finally said, "No, it's over." Henry assured me that he only saw Eileen as a younger sister, even mentioning that he'd shown her some apartments, and that once she felt better and he found the right place, she'd be moved out. I couldn't bear to let him go. Not after 8 years together, and for the sake of the baby I carried. I subconsciously placed my hand on my belly, then quickly pulled it back. "Henry, those are your words. Don't lie to me. If you mess with me, you'll regret it. Seriously." The day Eileen moved, the sky was cloudy. Henry and I accompanied her to her new place. She had a ton of stuff, and packing up took nearly 4 hours. By the time we returned, it was raining cats and dogs. As soon as we got home, Henry got a phone call from her. I couldn't make out what was said on the other end, but I watched Henry hesitate before answering. He hung up, paced around her old room, then grabbed an umbrella and dashed out. Apparently, she had forgotten something important, so I offered to take it to her. "It's pouring out there. Should we go now?" I asked. Her lost items were apparently urgent, so I nodded. I even suggested that I tag along. Henry looked at me, smiled, pulled me into a hug, and kissed my cheek. "Don't worry, I'll be back as soon as I drop these off." Even though I wanted to accompany him, I didn't push the issue. After all, I was pregnant, and I couldn't be so stubborn. I settled on the couch for a long time, poured myself a glass of warm water, and waited for him. Eventually, I received a text. "Haley, it's super rainy now. I'll chill here until it calms down, and when I'm back, I'll bring that cake you love the most." I stared at that message for a while, then replied, "Okay then." I stood up and glanced through the small gap in Eileen's door. Her place wasn't fully locked, and I could see the warm light inside, but I didn't have the guts to push it open. The hallway was dim, and I could hear soft sobbing from within. Eileen was crying. I could make out her voice through the door saying, "Henry, I miss you so much. Even all these years abroad, you were on my mind day and night. Don't you miss me?" My hand trembled on the door handle as I heard, "Eileen, you're drunk. Let me go. Stop messing around." Followed by the sound of a bottle clattering to the ground. Henry's voice firm, as if shoving her aside. "No, I'm not messing around. You were the one who said you liked me first, the one who wanted to be with me all the time. Do you still feel that way? You must still, right?" I pleaded. "Answer me." After a long-waited pause, I finally heard his weary reply. "So what if I did? It's all in the past now." My heart plummeted in an instant. I froze, my body numb, but my heart pounding as if it wanted to burst right out. Then, all the background noise faded, leaving only a muffled groan, a sound I knew all too well from the past. Back in the day, I used to love kissing Henry's neck while he read, and he'd let out that same groan. But now it was Eileen kissing him. And what about Henry? How was he reacting? I slowly cracked the door open just a bit. In the gentle light hitting my face, I saw Henry's stunned expression clearly, but then in the next moment, he closed his eyes slowly. They were kissing in that warm glow. I couldn't take it anymore. I clamped my hand over my mouth and bolted out in a frantic rush. Maybe the noise made the two inside break apart because Henry soon followed me outside, calling, "Haley, come on, let me explain. Things ain't what you think." Back at home, Henry tried over and over to explain, but I had shut myself in the bedroom, feeling dizzy inside. Outside, he was there, pleading that it was all a misunderstanding, that Eileen was just drunk and emotionally unstable, and that he was only there to keep her company, trying to smooth things over. He said the kiss was a mistake, all because Eileen was wasted. "Haley, it's all in the past. I have you now," he insisted. That night, I slept alone, tossing and turning as I mulled everything over. The next morning, I left the room early and opened the door to find Henry standing there, looking as if he hadn't slept at all. Dark circles under his eyes and a bit of stubble on his chin gave him a cautious, almost fearful look, as if he were a dog afraid of upsetting its owner. I paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "I'm starving. I want that porridge you make. Can you whip up some for me?" Henry's puzzled look quickly turned into a smile, as he thought I'd finally come around and forgiven him. But I hadn't. I'd just given up hope. I spent that night thinking a lot. I've never been one to focus only on others' faults. In fact, I'm usually the one who cherishes the kindness others have shown me. When I think of Henry, I remember the time he sat by my bedside when I had a fever, cooling me down with a damp towel. I recall the day he proposed on the beach, under a sky full of stars, holding me close and kissing me. I even remember when, on the anniversary of his parents' death, he hoarsely whispered, "Haley, I only have you. Promise me you won't leave me in this lifetime." But I also remember the times he wavered between me and Eileen, forgetting my allergies yet meticulously recalling everything about her. I remember that even though he said he loved me, his eyes were always drifting towards her. In these 8 years, I never truly felt his genuine heart. I'm exhausted, tired of giving everything and receiving nothing back. And I'm not ready to let him and Eileen have their happy ending without me. Closing my eyes heavily, I decided that even if I walked away, Henry wouldn't be free to be with Eileen. In the days that followed, Henry was on his best behavior, thinking of me, buying my favorite cakes, the latest handbags, and kissing my cheek every morning before leaving. He started coming to work on time and spending more time with me. But then I saw on Eileen's social media that he was also buying her medicine, cooking for her, celebrating her birthday. Her last Instagram post was 2 photos, one of her and him from years ago, both beaming with genuine warm smiles, and another selfie where she held a bouquet of roses, while a man in an apron busied himself in the kitchen. The caption read, "Time flies, but we just like in the past." Anyone looking at those pics would assume they were a loving, newlywed couple. I gave it a like, though inside I was seething. Soon after, Henry called, "Haley, have you wrapped up work? Let me pick you up for dinner." "Sure, let's go grab some Western food," I replied, even though deep down I knew he was juggling being with me and her, caught between not wanting to leave me and not wanting to let go of her. I pretended everything was fine, playing the role of the devoted wife who trusts him wholeheartedly. One evening, I distinctly heard Eileen calling him, and I asked, "Is that Eileen?" At that moment, he was half asleep next to me, answering the call in a groggy tone. "Yeah, she's got a cold and a headache." Then he paused suddenly. I smiled and said, "Then go see her, but remember, come back early." That night, Henry didn't leave. He said Eileen had her medicine and would be fine after a good night's sleep. After his words, he turned to look at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and hesitation. After a long pause, he finally blurted out, "Why? What? Why?" I feigned ignorance. "So in the middle of the night, you expect me to deliver medicine to another woman?" He knew deep down it wasn't right. I softly said, After all, she's your sister, isn't she? Finally, Henry sighed and said, I've thought it over. I should trust you. People gotta look forward, right? Let the past be the past. That night, we had a long heart to heart conversation. I've never been one to act overly emotional. I always tried to be strong. But that night, I mimicked Eileen's vulnerability, intentionally amping up my pain to seem fragile. And then I told him, Henry, I only have you. If I can't even trust you, who can I trust? You promised you'd be there for me for a lifetime. You won't let me down, will you? I knew his stubborn nature. He'd end up feeling guilty, because a man's guilt is always more real than love. But that wasn't enough. Slowly, I placed my hand on my abdomen, a twisted mix of satisfaction and pain welling up inside. I'd longed so much for this child. Both Henry and I had always dreamed of having our own, maybe because of our broken families. Not long after we married, there was a mix-up with a pregnancy test. When I told him I was pregnant, I'll never forget the way he reacted. Stunned, dazed for a moment, then coming to his senses with eyes shining. He wasn't one to show emotions openly, but that moment he couldn't hold back his smile. He scooped me up quickly, then carefully set me down, his face a portrait of regret and worry, clearly afraid that his actions might harm me or our baby. This whole saga is a mess of hurt, regret, and twisted love that just keeps piling on, even when you try to hold on. When I discovered I was truly pregnant, a surge of excitement mixed with eagerness to share the news with him overwhelmed me. Yet that very night, when I caught his distracted, absent-minded look, I inexplicably held back my words. Now, as I gently caress my belly, one thought keeps echoing. What if Henry finds out about the baby? And if he realizes that he's somehow responsible for the baby's demise, or even worse, that the loss is linked to him and Eileen, what would he do? I must have been losing my mind, feeling like one of those ruthless TV villains who use a child as a bargaining chip. Still, I couldn't help myself. He adored children and had longed for a baby with me for so long that we'd even chosen a name. If that were the case, surely he couldn't continue with Eileen without being overwhelmed by guilt, right? In just 10 days, it would be our second anniversary. To celebrate, Henry whisked me away on a trip, but I can't explain why. Right when we arrived, I suddenly felt unwell, even though this baby had always been so peaceful in my womb and I had never experienced any discomfort since getting pregnant. That night, I lay in bed with my eyes closed, unable to sleep, while Henry slept soundly beside me. The deep silence of the night magnified every little sound until I heard the incessant buzzing of a cell phone. It was Eileen calling again. Henry answered with a few words before abruptly hanging up, yet the phone kept buzzing. From the other end, I could hear Eileen's desperate cries. Henry, can you come see me? I feel so lousy. I think I'm gonna die. Nobody loves me. You don't want me, do you? I'm on the rooftop right now. The wind's fierce and the sky is pitch dark. Will you come to see me? After a while, Henry ran a hand over his forehead and let out a soft sigh. I stayed on the bed, pretending to sleep, until he gently nudged me awake with a kiss on my cheek. Haley, there's some trouble at work. I gotta head back for a bit. I'll be back by tomorrow morning, he said. Normally, I would have nodded obediently, playing the kind, accommodating role I'd adopted these days, trusting every word he said without question. But for some reason, my heart was pounding so hard that I feigned having had a nightmare, clinging to his waist and even shedding a few tears. Henry, please don't leave. I just had a bad dream. Don't leave me alone here. Yet, he still left, patting my head and urging me to be good and wait for him. Little did I know that he wouldn't be coming back. At 2 a.m., an earthquake struck. Our house collapsed, and I was buried under the rubble. What is it really like to be trapped beneath so much debris? It was pitch black, endless darkness with scarcely any air or space, just infinite blackness that magnified every flaw and weakness inside me. I thought I had completely given up on Henry, utterly disillusioned by him. I believed I was strong, but as I lay immobilized beneath the wreckage, I realized just how fragile I was. In that oppressive darkness, I managed to text Henry. Henry, there's been an earthquake. I'm trapped underground. It's so dark and I'm terrified. Am I gonna die? I don't want to die. Over the next 4 hours, my messages evolved from raw fear to numbness and eventually to bitter anger. My friends sent comforting texts, but Henry never replied. I couldn't shake the thought. While I was buried, what was he doing? Was he at Eileen's place, maybe even in her bed, whispering sweet nothings? The mere idea made me tremble uncontrollably. I remained entombed in the rubble for 10 excruciating hours before I was rescued. Then, a wild idea struck me. Shaking, I sent him 2 final texts and hurled my phone into the debris. Henry, I can't hold on anymore. Lucky you have work to keep you busy, or else you'd have been doomed here with me and our child. You're really lucky to be safe. I did it on purpose. I wanted him to believe I had perished in that mess. I wanted him to be haunted by guilt and regret. To remember that it was his suggestion that brought me here and his decision to leave me alone for Eileen, condemning me and our baby to die in a foreign land. Even on the brink of death, my heart and mind were consumed by thoughts of him. I wanted him tormented by memories and sleepless nights filled with guilt. By the time Henry finally received those messages, broad daylight had broken. The previous night, when he encountered Eileen on the rooftop, her silhouette nearly toppled by the fierce wind. She turned, looked at him, and offered a faint smile. Henry, you're back. Deep down, I knew he still kept me in his heart. Yet, seeing that scene, he felt a hint of weariness, though mostly it was pure heartache. That very night, Eileen clung to him, endlessly recounting her grievances. In that moment, he couldn't untangle his own feelings. Did he still love Eileen? It appeared not nearly as much, for he knew his heart belonged to Haley. 8 years together had made Haley not just a lover, but family. Although Eileen was the one who had initially pursued him, the one who first fell for him, over time he'd grown unable to leave Haley. As for Eileen, his feelings were reduced to mere reluctance and pity. She was his youthful flame, someone he never truly could embrace. In the past, everyone had been against them, and now he realized he should push her away, but he didn't. Instead, he patted her head and said, "Don't overthink it. Did you take your meds today? Any discomfort? I'll get you to a doctor." He convinced himself it was all okay. He was just taking care of a patient, his own sister in a way. Meanwhile, Haley remained blissfully unaware. She had loved him so deeply. This was the one time, the last time, that truly mattered. One morning, when he woke up and the sky was already bright, he was startled by the alarm clock. As he reached for his phone, he discovered his scheduled flight was canceled. Soon, a barrage of notifications flooded in. Finally, he saw Haley's texts, one after another, telling him there had been an earthquake, that she was buried underground, that it was pitch dark, and that she was terrified. For a moment, it felt like he'd been plunged into an ice cellar, his hand trembling as it held the phone. He kept telling himself, "No way, this can't be real." But the overwhelming flood of alerts made it undeniable. In a frantic panic, he called Haley, but she didn't answer. He texted her again, yet silence persisted. Fear gripped him like a raging hurricane, and his face turned deathly pale. Then Eileen approached him and asked, "Henry, what's wrong?" As she looked at him, as composed as ever, a stark memory flashed back. The night before at 2 a.m., when Haley was trapped under the rubble. What was he doing? His expression darkened further. He quickly grabbed his coat from the sofa and dashed out. "Henry, where are you going?" seemed to echo in his mind, though he paid it no heed. His steps were unsteady as he wandered, clueless about his destination. With flights canceled and roads in ruins, he realized he couldn't reach her. He was utterly stranded. Eventually, Henry returned to the home he had shared with Haley for 3 years. There, he sat numbly, refreshing his phone repeatedly, desperate for a message from her. After 5 long hours, 2 very brief texts finally arrived. "Henry, I can't hold on anymore. Lucky you have work keeping you busy, or else you'd have been stuck here with me and our child. You're really fortunate to be safe." His heart nearly burst. He and Haley had a child. Suddenly, memories of a few days ago rushed back, when Haley had brought home a package full of baby clothes and toys. Baffled, he had asked her why, and she'd just grinned and said a friend was pregnant. so she wanted to get her some gifts. Then, as he held her close, he had eagerly asked, "Haley, when are we going to have our own child?" She had blushed and smiled shyly before looking him in the eye, and seriously asking, "Henry, if we have our own baby someday, will you be a good husband and father?" "Of course I will. I promise to take care of you, do better than anyone else, and never let you down," he had replied. In that instant, a flood of memories came crashing over him. In a frantic search through our home, he discovered that every corner was filled with traces of Haley. On the fridge was a weekly meal plan, beautifully penned on a small chalkboard. In the closet, every piece of clothing was meticulously arranged. Even on his desk lay little cards with notes like, "It's been an hour of work, time for a break. Remember to drink water." How had he never noticed these details before? Why had he always taken them for granted? After searching for what felt like ages, he finally found in a drawer not only the baby clothes and toys, but also an old, thick sketchbook. He knew Haley loved to draw, yet he had no idea that she'd been secretly sketching portraits of him, capturing everything from their first meeting in high school, through the blossoming of their relationship, to falling in love and finally getting married. Every significant moment was recorded with her brush. The earliest drawing, weathered by time, showed him reading a book in a high school classroom with the caption, "The person I fell in love with at first sight." The second drawing depicted the beginning of their acquaintance, him discreetly handing a tissue packet to a tearful girl in a garden, with the note, "He really is a very gentle person." The third drawing left him momentarily puzzled, for he couldn't recall when he had looked that way. Only after reading the accompanying note did he realize it was from their first Chinese New Year celebration together. "It turns out someone like me has no home to return to. I really feel so sorry for him. From now on, I'll spend every Christmas with him. Even if he seems like he doesn't need my company, having someone by your side is always kind of better, right?" As he continued flipping through the sketchbook, he eventually came upon a portrait of the two of them together. Instead of human figures, it featured two exquisitely crafted ceramic dolls. Beside the drawing, she had written, "Our token of love. Even though you never admitted you liked me, we made ceramic dolls for each other, and you always smiled when you saw them. That counts as a kind of mutual understanding, right? I'll treasure these dolls. When we marry, have kids, and grow old, I'll pull them out, show them to our grandchildren, and tell them the story of their grandparents." Reading that, he drew a sharp breath and instinctively rushed to the living room in search of the ceramic dolls. But as he reached the display cabinet, the crushing realization hit him. The pair had already been shattered. His outstretched hand grasped at emptiness, and he eventually collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. After the earthquake, that place remained closed for a full 7 days. During that time, Henry took numerous actions, sending countless messages, making endless phone calls, even reporting her missing to the police. He tried to reach everyone connected to her, but no one had any information. He even visited her parents, but they were just as clueless about what had happened. He simply couldn't accept that his Haley was gone. Every night, he locked himself away in his room, too terrified to step outside, as every nook of the house was steeped in memories of her. There were so many shared moments between them. She had loved him so deeply, and he had loved her too. But how had it all gone so wrong? By the 6th night, even the flowers by the bedside, left neglected, had begun to wither, and he too felt withered. He spent hours lying in bed, thumbing through the photo album she left behind and the messages she'd sent while trapped underground. He wondered what emotions had flooded her while she was buried. She had loved him with a fierce, burning intensity, and yet he had betrayed her, leaving her to face that darkness all alone. Being trapped in such isolation, she must have felt utterly hopeless and scared, right? And yet she somehow managed to say, "It's so good that you're okay." Shutting his eyes tightly, he let his hand creep up to his neck as he pondered what it must have felt like down there. So dark, gloomy, with barely any light or air. What would it be like not being able to breathe? Gradually, his grip tightened, as if mimicking that suffocating sensation. He opened his mouth in a futile gasp, like a fish gasping for air, but his hand did not relent. Then, in the next moment, he eased his grip. He couldn't die. He had to go find her. Even in death, they should be together in the same place. The next time I saw Henry was on the 7th day after the earthquake. That day, the roads had finally been cleared and flights resumed. I had hidden in a tent, watching him from afar as he clutched my photo, searching for me everywhere. He had already asked the person in charge, but there was no sign of me. How could there be? I simply didn't want him to find me. After my rescue, I even lied, claiming I had lost my phone and ID. When they gathered information, I gave a friend's details instead. I wasn't sure how long I could hide from him, but for now, I'd do it as long as necessary. I stole one final glance at his frantic figure before slowly climbing into my friend's car. He looked utterly worn out, with stubble and unkempt hair. But honestly, he deserved it all. I stayed hidden at my friend Lucy's place for a week before finally stepping out. I went to the hospital for an abortion. When Henry eventually found me, I had already undergone the procedure and was lying on a hospital bed. His eyes reddened as he looked at me. Without saying a word, I pulled out the divorce agreement I'd prepared and said, "Let's get a divorce." Henry refused to sign. I then asked him, "Henry, what were you doing on the night of the earthquake at 2:30 a.m. when I was trapped under the rubble? I know everything. Sign it. You don't deserve my true feelings at all." For a moment, he was stunned, his face as pale as paper, yet he still wouldn't sign. Perhaps he realized that the love between us had withered away and that there was no baby anymore. This flimsy piece of paper, the marriage certificate with our two names, was all that connected us now. He forced a weak smile, though his body trembled. Then Henry pleaded, "Haley, let's go home. You've just had the operation. Let me take care of you." But Lucy, my friend who had picked me up after the earthquake and at whose house I'd been staying, pushed him away. "Do you have any shame at all?" she shouted. "Haley made it crystal clear. Don't you know what you've done? How dare you even mention taking care of her when I'm the one who will take good care of Haley?" He begged again. "Haley, I know I was wrong. I'll change. Will you forgive me? Give me another chance?" I snapped back. "Another chance? I've already given you one. I trusted you completely. What about you?" He fell silent, then pulled out the album. Veins stood out on his hand as he gripped it tightly. After a moment of hesitation, he stammered, But Haley, you love me, right? No one will ever love me like you do. If you love me so much, how can you just stop loving me all of a sudden?" I stared at him, my heart unmoved. I let out a light laugh, snatched the album from him, and tore it to shreds. "Henry, I loved you, but that was in the past. I loved you, but seriously, who wouldn't be better off than with you? Every stroke and line in that album held my true feelings, but you don't deserve to keep them." In the days that followed, Henry came to see me every day. He'd bring soup he'd cooked and knock on Lucy's door, and every time, Lucy would dump the soup into the trash and send him on his way. A week later, Lucy had enough. She called the police to keep Henry away. After that, Henry waited for me at the community gate every single day for over half a month. During that time, he even quit his job, and Eileen was completely abandoned. Meanwhile, I never came down to see him. Then, on my birthday, half a month later, Henry called. He had bought a birthday cake for me and was hoping I'd come see him. Over the phone, he promised he'd wait until I came over, but I said nothing and just hung up. I still didn't go to see him. That night, as rain poured down, I eventually went to sleep. Early the next morning, I received a call from Eileen. She told me that Henry had a high fever and was lying in the hospital, begging for me to come see him. I still said nothing and hung up, but later I headed to the hospital. The strong smell of disinfectant hit me as Henry saw me, his eyes lighting up immediately. I looked at him and then at the equally haggard Eileen beside him, and I slapped them both without hesitation. "What the heck are you doing?" I demanded. Eileen tried to speak, attempting to push me, but I shoved her to the ground and slapped her again, splashing water from a nearby table onto her face. I fixed her with a steady, deliberate gaze, saying slowly, "Shouldn't you be hit? You ought to be grateful that I'm not arguing with you right now, or I'd have exposed all your dirty secrets ages ago. Don't you have any shame? Can't you live without your Henry? Now that he doesn't want you, why haven't you just died yet? Or is that diagnosis report a total sham? My words struck her hard. She turned pale, too shocked to reply. I was too damn tired to even look at her again. All the while, Henry just watched silently, completely ignoring that I had just slapped Eileen. He didn't say a word, and when I glanced at him, he gently tugged on my sleeve, his red eyes filled with a hopeful plea. Haley. I pulled my sleeve away, frowned silently, and then said slowly, Henry, you really disgust me. He stammered, I just feel guilty. I want to make it up to you. I laughed out loud and tossed the divorce agreement at him again. Make it up to me. You're just wallowing in self-pity. I've already said it, in this life or the next. I never want to see you again, understand? No matter what you do, I can never forgive you, even if you're dying in that hospital right now. I'm just disgusted. If you truly feel guilty, then sign the damn papers. At that, the light in his eyes finally faded. In the end, Henry signed the divorce papers. I moved out of Lucy's house, changed cities, and started a new life. For the next few years, I never saw Henry again. Yet every Christmas, inexplicable packages would arrive, filled with jewelry and luxury items, which I promptly returned. Once, I even received a pair of ceramic dolls that looked nearly identical to the ones Eileen had smashed. I ended up breaking them and sending them back. 3 years after the divorce, my career took a major leap forward, and I met someone new at work. It didn't take long for us to hit it off naturally and start dating. He was a gentle soul, a stark contrast to Henry. He had no messy exes, and since we began dating, he often talked about me. Everyone around him knew he was a bit henpecked. He rarely drank, kept his distance from other women, and always returned home on time, almost as if I had him on a short leash. He told me, Haley, I am your boyfriend. I have an obligation to keep myself in check and give you a sense of security. Let's continue our relationship naturally and get married. Shortly after we married, I heard that Henry was in a really rough spot. After our divorce, he had sunk into a deep depression, numbing himself with alcohol every day and even ending up in the hospital several times. On the day of my wedding, he drank until he suffered stomach bleeding. That pale, haunting moonlight had always been by his side, but now, Henry no longer wanted its company. Word was he was genuinely depressed. A few days later, I received a letter with no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from him. I didn't even bother reading it. I just tore it up and threw it in the trash. After so many years, I had moved on and wasn't interested in anything else he had to say.